Let me introduce you the structure of our first introduction class. First, I will introduce myself, then I will tell you some information about the teaching process, exams and evaluation procedures, then the structure of the course and main objectives will be given to you, and of course the first lecture of the course will be given as well. Let me introduce myself. I am Ivan Monic, a sustainable tourism researcher. I defended PhD in economics in 2011. So now I work at Beijing International Education Institute and deliver courses at Chinese universities like Nanning Normal University, then Danzi University of Traditional Chinese Medicine, and Shaoyang University. In 2008, I was working as a visiting researcher in Sweden at Umeå University. The research project was about assessing tourist travel patterns and how they impact on the spatial development of the different types of counties. Then in 2017, I also was awarded a scholarship from Swedish government to conduct one more research in northern Sweden. In 2011, I defended my PhD. So PhD research was focused on the ecotourism economy in transborder regions, actually between Chinese border region Inner Mongolia and the Russian border region Transbaikal region. Then I have been working in 3 countries as a researcher in Russia, in Sweden and in China. And also I have practical experience in working at a tour operator company. Also, I have developed a personal website where you can find some information about myself in English and Chinese. And also there are some information for our course. There is a special section on the website, so you can download the presentations and the tutorials. I was working in several countries, in Sweden, Finland, Russia and China. I worked at a tour operator company and I was a responsible person to organize tour packages for Chinese tourists visiting Russia from Inner Mongolia to Baikal Lake. Then as I mentioned, I defended my PhD based on cross-border tourism between Inner Mongolia and Transbaikal region. I have a question to you. What is the coldest weather that you have ever experienced? In my case, in my home city, in January, the temperature dropped until -47.5. At the same time, on the same day, in the southern part of China, in Nanning, the temperature was +26. In Sweden, +7, and in my home city, -47.5. That's extremely cold. I even took a picture of the thermometer to prove that extreme cold temperature. And one more fact about Siberia winter. If you spill the boiling water outside of your cup, you'll get some amazing pictures like this. Okay, let's go back to our lecture, the teaching process. During this semester, we are going to have seminars with case studies, lectures on the main course topics, then research work. It is mandatory to attend the lectures and seminars, otherwise you will be not allowed to take the final exams. Also, some additional tasks will be given to you during the lectures. Here you can see some information about how the teaching process goes. So the structure of the lectures includes expected learning outcomes in the beginning, then main content of the lecture, then review of the content, then questions and self-checked questions, and then video, 1 or 2 videos illustrating the main points of the content. For the seminars, we are going to have business cases from all over the world to discuss. Also, a brief video about the case will be given to you, and a PDF file with the case study materials and questions. Also expect you to work in groups. Assessments and exams. The following grading system will be used: pass with distinction, pass, and fail. Here you can see one of the textbooks that we are going to use, The Research Methods for Business Students. It is the 7th edition by Mark Saunders, Philippe Levis, and Adrian Thornhill. The second textbook is presented on the screen. It is The Research Methods in Tourism, Hospitality and Events Management. Some case studies will be given from this textbook. Now it's time to talk about the content of the course. The first lecture that we are going to take today is Introduction. Then the second lecture is written to assist you in the generation of ideas, which will help you to choose a suitable research topic and offers advice on what makes a good research topic. The lecture discusses how to turn this idea into clear research questions, aim, and objectives. Finally, the lecture provides advice on how to write a research proposal. The importance of the critical literature review to your research is discussed in Lecture 3. This lecture outlines what a critical review needs to include and the range of secondary and primary literature sources available. The lecture explains the purpose of reviewing the literature, discusses a range of search strategies, and contains advice on how to plan and undertake your search and to write your review. The process of identifying keywords and searching using online databases and search engines are outlined. It also offers advice on how to record items and to evaluate their relevance. Lecture 4 addresses the issue of understanding different research philosophies, including positivism, critical realism, integrativism, postmodernism, and pragmatism. Within these, the functionalist, interpretive, radical humanist, and radical structuralist paradigms are discussed. Deductive, inductive, and abductive approaches to theory development are also considered. In this lecture, we challenge you to think about your own values and beliefs, and so on. These ideas are developed further in Lecture 5, which explores formulating your research design. As part of this, the methodological choice of quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods is considered. A variety of research strategies are explored and discussed. Consideration is given to the implications of research design for the credibility of your research findings and conclusions. Lecture 6 explores issues related to gaining access to the research ethics. It offers advice on how to gain access both to organizations and to individuals using both traditional and internet-mediated strategies. Potential ethical issues are discussed in relation to each stage of the research process and different data collection methods. Issues of data protection are also introduced. A range of the probability and non-probability sampling techniques available for use in your research is explained in Lecture 7. The lecture considers why sampling is necessary and looks at issues of sample size and likely response rate for both probability and non-probability samples. Advice on how to relate your choice of sampling techniques to your research topic is given, and techniques for assessing the representativeness of those who respond are discussed. Lectures 8 and 9 are concerned with different methods of obtaining data and assessing data. Lecture 10 helps you with the structure, content, and style of your final project report, and then associated oral and poster presentations. So this is our preliminary plan, and it can be updated. Let's start our first lecture. The topic is the Business and Management Research, reflective diaries, and the purpose of the course. Expected learning outcomes are given on the slide. After studying this lecture, you should be able to outline the purpose and distinct focus of business and management research, to place your research project on a basis applied research continuum according to its purpose and context, to understand the utility and importance of keeping a reflective diary, to understand the stage you will need to complete as a part of your research process, and the last one, to have an overview of this course purpose, structure, and features. We are going to start from introduction. This course is designed to help you to undertake your research project. It provides a clear guide on how to undertake research, as well as highlighting the realities of undertaking research, including the more common pitfalls. The course is given to provide you with a guide to the research process and with the necessary knowledge and skills to undertake a piece of research, from first thoughts about a research topic to writing a project report. After completing this course, you have been introduced to research philosophies and approaches to reasoning and explored a range of strategies, techniques, and procedures which you can use in your research project. Of equal importance, you will know that there is no one best way for undertaking the research. Rather, you will be aware of the choices you have to make and how this will impact upon what you can find out. This means you will be able to make a series of informed choices, including your research philosophy, approaches to reasoning, strategies, techniques, and procedures that are most suitable to your own research. In your study, you will read a wide range of books and articles. In many of these, the terms research method and research methodology will be used interchangeably. Perhaps just use a methodology as a more verbose way of saying method. In this book, we have been more precise in our use of these terms. Throughout the book, we use the term methods to refer to techniques and procedures used to obtain and analyze data. This therefore includes questionnaires, observation, and interviews, as well as both quantitative and qualitative statistics and techniques and methods. In contrast, the term methodology refers to the theory of how research should be undertaken. We believe it is important that you have some understanding of this so that you can make informed choices about your research. For this reason, we also discuss a range of philosophical assumptions upon which research can be based and the implications of these for the methods or methods adopted. It's time to talk about the nature of the research. When listening to the radio, watching the television, or reading a daily newspaper, it is difficult to avoid the term research. The results of research are all around us. A debate about the findings of a recent poll of people's opinions includes a discussion of a research, normally referring to the way in which the data were collected. Politicians often justify their policy decisions on the basis of research. Newspapers report the findings of academics' research as well. So, the word research is everywhere around us. But the question is, what is not a research? There are some examples. Just collecting facts or information with no clear purpose, or assembling and reordering facts or information without interpretation, or as an esoteric activity with no or little relevance to everyday life. And the last one is a term to get your product or idea noticed and respected. There are some researchers argue that many of these everyday use of the term research are not research in the true meaning of the word. As a part of this, they highlight ways in which the term is used wrongly. So there are some examples, of the way how they can be used wrongly. Research has a number of characteristics. Data are collected systematically. Data are interpreted systematically. there is a clear purpose to find things out. We can therefore define research as a process that people undertake in a systematic way in order to find out things, thereby increasing their knowledge. Two phrases are important in this definition: systematic way and to find out things. Systematic suggests that research is based on logical relationships and not just beliefs. Some examples and evidence for this you can find in the article published by Kari and Gonberg in 2010. As a part of this, your research will involve an explanation of the method or methods used to collect the data. You argue why the results obtained are meaningful, and will explain why any limitations that are associated with them. The second is to find out things, suggests there are a multiplicity of possible purposes for your research. Business and management research. Using our earlier definition of research, we can define business and management research as undertaking systematic research to find out things about business and management. Let's see in details what business research is. Easterby-Smith argued that three features combine to make business and management a distinctive focus for research. Here you can see the first two. The eclectic nature of management and management research, drawing upon knowledge developed in different disciplines such as sociology, geography, psychology, economics, and statistics, which have different underlying assumptions. The second, the high levels of education of both managers and employees. Most now have undergraduate or master's degrees, and as such tend often to be as well educated as those conducting research about them. The last one is the expectation for research to have some practical consequences and to lead directly to action. This means it either needs to contain the potential for taking some form of action or needs to take account of the practical consequences of their findings. It also means that managers are unlikely to allow research access unless they can see an advantage for their organization or themselves. So these three items are described by Easterby-Smith in his article in 2012 to define what is business and management research. An article by Hodgkinson in 2001 offers a useful fourfold taxonomy for considering rigor and relevance in relation to managerial knowledge. Using the dimensions of theoretical and methodological rigor and the practical relevance, they identified four quadrants. Let's see. So the first one is pedantic science, where we have a higher level of theoretical and methodological rigor and lower practical relevance. Then popularist science, where we have a lower theoretical and methodological rigor and higher practical relevance. Then we have puerile science, with a lower theoretical and methodological rigor and with a lower practical relevance. And the last one is pragmatic science, with higher levels for both things. Now it's time to talk about Mode 1 and Mode 2 in knowledge creation. In the past 2 decades, debate about the nature of management research has focused on how it can meet the double hurdle of being both theoretically and methodologically rigorous, while at the same time embracing the world of practice and being of practical relevance. The latter being reframed more recently as socially useful. Much of this debate has centered around the work by Gibbons in 1994 on the production of knowledge, and in particular the concepts of Mode 1 and Mode 2 knowledge creation. So, what is Mode 1 and Mode 2? Mode 1 knowledge creation emphasizes research in which the questions are set and solved by academic interests, emphasizing a fundamental rather than applied nature. where there is little, if any, focus on utilization of the research by practitioners. In contrast, Mode 2 emphasizes a context for research governed by the world of practice, highlighting the importance of collaboration both with and between practitioners, and the need for production of particular relevant knowledge. Based upon this, Starkey and Madden in 2001 observed that research within the Mode 2 offers a way of bringing together the supply side of knowledge represented by universities, together with the demand side represented by businesses, and overcoming the double hurdle. Bresnan and Burrell in 2012 suggest a further alternative, which they consider as a form termed Mode 1 knowledge creation. On the next slide, I will give you information about the Mode 0. The Mode 0. It refers to knowledge production based on power and patronage being particularly visible in the close relationships between sponsor and researcher. For example, pharmaceutical industry sponsorship of medical research. Also, there is a Mode 3 knowledge production. Drawing upon these debates, it could be argued that business and management research not only needs to provide findings that advance knowledge and understanding, it also needs to address business issues and practical managerial problems. However, this would negate the observation that Mode 2 practices develop from Mode 1. It might also result in business and management research that did not have obvious commercial benefit not being pursued. A third road, in addition to the two academic career roles of research and teaching, highlights a further form of knowledge production, which is known as Mode 3. Information about the Mode 3 knowledge production is given on the slide. It emphasizes the importance of broader issues of human relevance of research, and we consider links to the idea of research being socially useful. In addition to research that satisfies your intellectual curiosity for its own sake, the findings of business and management research might also contain practical implications, and these findings may have social consequences far broader and complex than perhaps they are visible by Mode 2. The information regarding Mode 1, 2, 3, and 0 has been discussed in articles and entire special issues of journals, including the Journal of Management Studies and the British Journal of Management. Also in volumes such as Kessel and Lees, Challenges and Controversies in Management Research. The next picture illustrates the relationship between management researchers and practitioners. Some common points between them. The first is focus of interest. The basic understanding, that's what management researchers have, and practitioners, they have usable knowledge. Then management researchers, they have why knowledge, and practitioners, they have how-to knowledge. Also, methodological imperatives are different. For researchers, the most important is theoretical and methodological rigor, and for practitioners, the time is the main issue, so timeliness. Also, key outcome for researchers, the significant outcome of collaboration and of the research is an academic publication. And for practitioners, the most important outcome of collaboration with the researchers could be actionable results with a practice impact. Also, we have views of each other. They can view each other in a positive way or in a bad way, prefer to ignore or deprecate each other. The next is basic and applied research. Despite this variety, we believe that all business and management research projects can be placed on a continuum according to their purpose and context. At one extreme of the continuum is research that is undertaken purely to understand the processes of business and management and their outcomes. Such research is undertaken largely in universities and largely as a result of an academic agenda. Its key consumer is the academic community, with relatively little attention being given to its practical applications. This is often termed basic or fundamental or pure research. Given our earlier discussion, it is unlikely that Mode 2 and Mode 3 business and management research would fulfill the criteria of being undertaken purely to understand, due to at least some consideration being given to the practical consequences of what have been found out. Through considering the practical consequences, the research would start to move towards the other end of the continuum. At this end is the research that is of direct and immediate use to managers, addresses issues that they see as important, and is presented in ways that they understand and can act upon them. This is termed applied research. The next topic is research process. Most research textbooks represent research as a multi-stage process that you must follow in order to undertake and complete your research project. The precise number of stages varies, but they usually include formulating and clarifying a topic, reviewing the literature, designing the research, collecting data, analyzing data, and writing up a report. In the majority of these, the research process, although presented with the rationalized examples, is described as a series of stages through which you must pass. Articles you have read may also suggest that the research process is rational and straightforward. Unfortunately, this is very rarely true, and the reality is considerably meager, with what initially appear as great ideas sometimes have little or no relevance. While research is often depicted as moving through each of the stages just outlined, one after the other, this is unlikely to be the case. In reality, some stages will overlap and you will probably revise and revisit each stage more than once. Each time you revisit a stage, you will need to reflect on the associated issues and refine your ideas. In addition, as highlighted by some textbooks and researchers, you will need to consider ethical and access issues during the process. Our course presents a research process as a series of linked stages and gives the appearance of being organized in a linear manner. However, as you use the course, you'll see that we have recognized the concurrent and interactive nature of the research process you will follow in the examples of research by well-known academic researchers, student research, how research is reported in the news and case studies, as well as our extensive use of cross-referencing. As part of this process, we believe it is vital that you spend time formulating and clarifying your research topic. This, we believe, should be expressed as one or more research questions that your research must answer, accompanied by a set of objectives that your research must address. Within this flow chart, which will be given on the next slide, the stages you will need to complete as a part of your research project are emphasized in the center of the chart. However, be warned, the process is far messier than a brief glance at figure suggests. You will notice in the figure that we include a series of arrows labeled reflection and revision. During your research project, you'll find it helpful to keep a separate reflective diary in which you note down what has happened and the lessons you have learned, both from things that have gone well and things that have not gone so well during the research process. Here is a figure. The process of observing your own research practice and examining the way you do things is termed reflection. However, there is a more complex process incorporating interpretation as well as reflection and involving you in thinking about your experience and questioning the way you have done the things. This process, known as reflexivity, involves you in thinking about interpreting your role in the research and the way in which this is influenced by the object of research. Here you can see several steps that you need to perform to write down your research report in the end of the cycle. Let's have a look at the figure one more time. So it starts from wish to do research. Then you need to formulate and clarify your research topic. It will be given to you on the lecture number 2. Then critically review the literature. Then to understand your philosophy and approach, and some of them will be given to you also during the class. Then you need to formulate your research and design. And then you need to collect the data. We have several methods of collecting the data. Also, we will discuss them later. Then you need to analyze your data. And finally, the final stage is writing your research project and report. The next framework I would like you to be introduced to is the work of Kolb and Honey and Mumford on the learning cycle. This views the learning process as going through a 4-stage cycle of first, concrete experience, then observation and reflection in relation to the experience, then forming abstract concepts and generalizations from these observations and reflections, and then testing these concepts and generalizations in new situations. The learning cycle emphasizes that for learning to happen, you need to pass through the complete cycle, as without reflection there will be no learning from the experience. Such reflection is a process of stopping and thinking about the concrete experience that has happened or is happening now, and the subsequent forming of the concepts and generalizations so you can apply what you have learned from experience to new situations. A few words about the purpose and structure of the course. As I stated earlier, the overriding purpose of this course is to help you to undertake research. This means that early on in your research project, you need to be clear about what you are doing, why you are doing it, and the associated applications of what you are seeking to do. You will also need to ensure that you can show how your ideas relate to research that has already been undertaken in your topic area, and that you have a clear research design and have thought about how you will collect and analyze your data. As part of this, you will need to consider the validity and reliability of the data you intend to use, along with associated ethical and access issues. The appropriate and sustainable use of techniques that you choose to collect the data. Finally, you need to write and present your research project as clearly and precisely as possible, making sure you meet all your assessment criteria. Every lecture has tasks. To enable you to check that you have understood the lecture, a series of self-checked questions is included at the end. This can be answered without recourse to other or external resources. Self-check questions are followed by review and discussion questions. Here is a summary of our first introduction lecture. This course is designed to help you to undertake a research project. It is designed as an introductory text and will guide you through the entire research process. Business and management research involves undertaking systematic research to find out things. It is transdisciplinary and engages with both theory and practice. Summary number 1. All business and management research projects can be placed on a basic applied continuum according to their purpose and context. Wherever your research project lies on this continuum, you should undertake your research with rigor. To do this, you will need to pay careful attention to the entire research process. In order to enhance your learning during your research, we recommend you to keep a reflective diary or notebook. Summary number 4. In this course, research is represented as a multi-stage process. However, this process is rarely straightforward and will involve both reflecting and revising stages already undertaken and forward planning. The summary number 5. The text of each lecture is supported through a series of boxed examples. These include focus on student research, focus on management research, and focus on research in the news. In addition, there are checklists, self-check questions, and review and discussion questions, an assignment and a case study with questions. Here you can see our self-check questions for the first lecture. So please take your time to answer the following questions. Outline the features that can make business and management research distinctive from research in other disciplines. The second question, what are the key differences between basic and applied research? And the third question, please examine the figure 1.2. What does this suggest about the need to plan and to reflect on and revise your ideas? Review and discussion questions. Agree with a friend to each read a different quality newspaper. Make a note of at least 10 articles in your newspaper that mention the word research. Now, examine the article one at a time. As you examine each article, does the reference to research refer to the collection of facts of information with no clear purpose, or refer to the reassembling and reordering of facts or information without interpretation? Provide a means of getting the reader to respect what has been written. Refer to the systematic collection and interpretation of the data with a clear purpose. Please take 10 minutes to discuss your answers with your friend. You can use different newspapers. For instance, Jamin Jabal could be a good example. The second review and discussion question, please revisit the table 1.2, practitioner and management researcher orientations, and look at the differences in management researcher and practitioner orientations. So the question is, to what extent do you believe that business and management research should meet the practitioner requirements? Give reasons for your answer. Here you can see the table 1.2, which you can use to make your answer, to compile your answer. So put the video on pause and take your time to provide your answer. In the end of the lecture, I would like to share a video with you which illustrates why the research is so important and how to get the ideas. So, why is business research so important? Why should we conduct the similar research again and again? Why should we keep asking the same questions? Actually, the questions are the same, but the answers have changed. So every time we conduct a research, we can get a new answers. Let me tell you a story about Einstein. One day, the story is told of how Albert Einstein one day gave his students a final exam that has a year old. In fact, Einstein had given his students the exact same final exam the year before. His assistant noticed the error or mistake and made the famous physicist aware of his mistake. Einstein looked closer at the newly distributed sheet and answered, "You're right. These are the same questions as last year, but the answers have changed." So every time we collect the data, the results can be different. I would like to illustrate you a video made by Paul Ralkins. He is an expert in achieving big goals in the easiest, fastest, and most elegant way possible. Originally trained as a chemical engineer, he has moved his focus to the fascinating field of high performance. So his video is about why the majority is always wrong. So he made a research, and I think it will be useful for you to see his approach to conduct a research. So take your time and watch the video.
In 1942, Albert Einstein was teaching at Oxford University. And one day, he just gave an exam of physics to his senior class of physics students. And he was walking on the campus with his assistant. And all of a sudden, the assistant looked at Albert Einstein and said, Dr. Einstein, this exam which you just gave to the senior class of physics students, isn't that exactly the same exam you gave to exactly the same class 1 year ago? Yeah, said Albert Einstein, it's exactly the same. But Dr. Einstein, how could you possibly do that? The assistant said. Well, said Einstein, the answers have changed. The answers have changed. In other words, what is true for 1942 is even more true for today. We live in a world where the questions might be the same, but the answers have changed. In other words, what has got you here will no longer get you there. And if you want to have results that you've never had before, well, you need to start doing things you've never done before. Now, the key question for today is, of course, is there a method to the madness? Is there a way that each of us can do impossible things to truly create dramatic results? And the good news is that the answer to that question is yes. Because what I'm going to explain today is, when it comes to high performance, why the majority is always wrong, and how you can use that to get everything you can out of everything you've got. But let me first introduce you to something interesting, an interesting observation. When people, teams, and organizations, whenever they hit a wall, they tend to do one of two things. They either do more of the same things, or they do less of the same things. But what you very seldom see is that they start to do different things instead. And it's interesting, if you look at the data, approximately 3% of people are inclined to even do different things. And the remaining 97% continues to smash into the wall, like some kind of crazy energy bunny on steroids. And why is that? Why is that? And to understand what is going on here, we need to ask ourselves another question. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of thinking? What is the purpose of thinking? Now, if you ask that question to a brain scientist, the brain scientist will say, well, the purpose of thinking is to stop thinking. The purpose of thinking is to stop thinking. Now, what does she mean by that? Well, here's the thing. Thinking is a high energy activity. It takes a lot of energy to think. So whenever we think, we try to think as short as possible, and then we return to automatic pilot. Over 95% of our life, we run on automatic pilot. For example, if you've ever driven a car and then you realize, whoa, what did I do in the past half an hour? That's your brain on automatic pilot. Yeah? Another example, many of you right now are listening to me on automatic pilot. And I know who you are. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. If your brain is an automatic pilot, this leads to what the scientists call mental myopia, also known as tunnel vision. And if you have tunnel vision, that's a bit of a problem, because it confuses people about their own performance. And this is the reason that many people go through life acting like a mediocre race car driver who sits in his car, looks in his rearview mirror, sees his competition, and is so far behind that they think they are first. Yeah. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, we tend to think inside the box, and the box is a very good metaphor here. So let me draw a box. And if you take a close look at the box, you see that the boundaries of this box are very well defined. So we think inside defined boundaries. I'll give you an example. One boundary is a legal boundary, and we think within the legal framework. I'll give you an example. Very few of you would think of stealing the wallet of the person next to you in order to fund your next cool startup. Yeah? At least that's what I hope. Yeah? So we think in legal boundaries, but there are other boundaries as well. We think in technological boundaries, we think in physical boundaries, but we also think in moral boundaries. And this is why we think inside the box. At least that's what we think. Because the reality is that the box in which we think looks more like this. Now, for those of you in the back who cannot see it, the reason is this is a very small box. And let me illustrate how small this box can be. For example, if I would say tonight, let's have something to eat, have dinner tonight, what would be options to do that? And probably you can come up with, hey, let's buy some pizza, go to a restaurant, cook at home, all kind of cool ideas. But I believe that very few of you would raise their hand and say, hey, let's go to the highway close by, see if we can pick up some dead animals on the side of the road and prepare ourselves a crispy dinner. That's a disturbing thought. But here's the funny thing, for many people in the world, this would be a perfectly normal response. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, so what it shows is that the box in which we think is actually very, very small. And if you take a closer look at your industry or professional field, you also think inside a very small box. And the boundaries of this box, they are called industry standards or industry norms. For example, if you are in the restaurant business, then the industry standard is that people come to your establishment, they eat, and then they pay. That's the standard. That's how everyone is doing it. Another example, if you are in the banking business, this norm is that people give you money, you say thank you very much, and you give the money to someone else. I mean, that's banking. So those are standards, those are norms in the industry or professional field. But this is what you need to know. The word norm is an abbreviation for normal. In other words, if you do what everyone else is doing, you get the results that everyone else is getting, and those are normal results. And the thing is, what we are after today are extraordinary results. Yeah? So the key question is, of course, how can you kick yourself out the box? Out this very small box of your industry and professional field and move to the happy place where cool innovation happens. Yeah, how can you do that? Now, let me introduce you the curious case of the London taxi drivers. If you want to become a taxi driver in London, you need to know the entire city by heart. And this is called the knowledge. And you can imagine it takes years to get the knowledge in your head. And that's a bit of a problem if you want to rapidly expand your taxi business. So they ask themselves a question. How can we rapidly expand our taxi business while at the same time employing taxi drivers who do not know anything about the City of London? And then they came up with a very ingenious solution. What they said is, well, actually, then we make two kinds of taxis. One is a normal taxi, and the other taxi has a big sign on it which says, the driver of this vehicle does not know anything about the City of London, but loves to get directions from you. And that's a brilliant solution, because this attracted those people who lived in London, knew the city very well, and finally could pay boss in a taxi. Yeah. Brilliant. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this sounds like a very cute story. But there's much more than meets the eye. Because what we have found is that breakthrough innovation, extraordinary results happen when people decide to finally break the standards or the norms in their industry or professional field. And you see that over and over again. For example, if you would have a furniture business and one day you would decide to no longer assemble furniture for your customers, probably you would end up with a company called IKEA. Yeah. Another example, if you own a computer business and one day you would decide to no longer sell your computer using a physical store, probably you would end up with a company called Dell Computers. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, what it tells us, there is a method to the madness. And by understanding that the majority is always wrong when it comes to high performance, finally you have the opportunity to quit fixing things and move to massive innovation instead. Ladies and gentlemen, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once said that the object of life is not to side with the majority, but the object of life is to escape finding oneself joining the ranks of the clinically insane. If you do what everyone else is doing, you're not distinguishing yourself and you're probably stuck. And this is why, when it comes to high performance, the majority is always wrong. This is what we know. We know that 3% of people are able to achieve extraordinary results. And each of you can become part of those 3% by deciding as of today to break your industry standards and to break your industry norms. The alternative, of course, is that you become part of the 97% who in the end works for those 3%. And as of today, that choice is completely yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention.